Yeah. Senator Solomon.
Thank you, Madam President. It is indeed an honor to join in this debate, and it's with great humility. I hope to make some submissions of value on this 2017 debate. Madam President, before I begin my discourse, I have to say, with some quiet bemusement, I listened to my honorable friend, Senator Vice President De Freitas. And I'm glad that he's returned. We do enjoy a good relationship outside of the Parliament, but it's with great reluctance that I feel obliged to mention a few of his points and set the record straight and remind the young senator that he is the Vice President of the Senate, and as such he should try to exercise some degree of impartiality and not descend too much into the realms of attacks and political toing and froing.
Senator Solomon, I do think, though, that you're imputing improper motives to the Vice President. So try and put your contribution, put it across in another way.
Indeed, Madam, I understand that is. I appreciate that. But during the course of this debate, and I do not mean to impute any improper motives on my friend. I do, however, think that there would be times when he's sitting in this debate and will be ruling over the members of this Senate. And therefore, I was a bit disappointed to see him to go into that degree. But I'll leave it at that, Madam President. In terms of the misinformation that was coming from the Vice President, I think that it is important to note when he spoke about the value for money and the laptop program, he seemed to spend about 15 minutes of his time speaking about the laptop program and that it was not value for money. And he spent a mere 3 minutes talking about Tobago and that under this PNM administration, value for money was a prime objective. Well, we should be proud, should we not, that under the PNM administration in Tobago, there were a number of projects that cost hundreds of millions of dollars and no value for money there. If I could refer to the library complex, started in 2003 at $30 million, but by 2013 was carrying a cost of $300 million. Value for money under the PNM. The financial complex, again in Tobago, started in 2002 at a cost of $30 million, but by 2012 was carrying a cost of $116 million. Value for money. The Shore Park Cultural Center started in 2006 at a cost of $196 million, but by 2016 was carrying a cost of $1 billion. Tobago, value for money under the PNM. And then come into this chamber and boast that under the PNM administration, that young people in Tobago should now be overjoyed and happy that they can sell tulum and sell juice and Bene balls because they've spent over $1 billion in over-budgeting, over-expenditure on projects. Value for money? If they had taken one over-budgeted project, let's say the library complex, that alone could have paid for the entire laptop program and put all the laptops for the children in the nation, Trinidad and Tobago.
And export plenty benefits.
And then to come into this Senate and say that we did a project for seating at Las Cuevas, as though that is some accomplishment under the PNM administration, when you're facing what dire situation, that is diversification, that is attracting tourism, Or you're going to boast that under this PNM administration, there was a brilliant idea to move the Ministry of Agriculture out of Port of Spain and free up that land. It hasn't even happened yet. Madam President, he has accused this government, this opposition, of fear-mongering. And we all know that the PNM are, in fact, the ultimate fear-mongers. Yes. Need I refer to the email gate where false allegations were made against the Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, of the most horrendous nature, and has yet not been proven. Total invention, total fear-mongering. Now, when we move on and the Vice President refers to the CPEP program, does he know that $106 million has been cut and that thousands of people are going to lose their job? That is not something to boast about. That is a serious, serious situation. A lot of people are going to be losing their jobs, and it's not a fact that we must boast about it. We've got to find alternative employment. We've got to create economic development. We've got to create jobs. Madam President, he then went on to talk about GATE. And I have to ask the Vice President, is it that he discriminates against persons and supports persons not getting an education over 50 years? Is that...
Senator Solomon, that language, is it that he discriminates? That's what you just said? Just rephrase that for me, please. That's quite unparliamentary.
Is it that the young Vice President agrees...
Senator Solomon, please, there's no need to refer to the Vice President as the young Vice President. He's the Vice President of the Senate.
Apologies, Madam President. The Vice President, no disrespect intended, I assure you. Is it that he agrees with persons over 50 years not being allowed to get GATE? That is all I am asking. Madam President, I'm joining the debate at a time when the debate has been concluded in the other place, and the nation is yet no clearer, confident, or comfortable that Trinidad and Tobago is being managed by a vision or a plan, or is not even being operated with some sort of coordinated intervention by this government. What we do have is a nation that is suffering from a great deal more panic, more despair, sharper concerns over stability and viability of our businesses, growing worried by unemployment. Persons are losing their jobs rapidly. And the persons who are unemployed are worried about finding jobs. Crime is at an all-time high. The kidnapping has resumed under this PNM government. Murders, the streets are awash with blood. The murders is the highest that's ever been recorded. Crimes against children have been the most disgusting that we have experienced as a nation. And we've even seen crimes against the elderly. This is where our nation is at. Madam President, we have a nation that's living in fear as Diwali and Christmas approach. It's a nation of investors who are nervous about the money they have already invested, fearful of investing any more, worried about the implications of a new dispensation of fiscal taxes, VAT here, VAT there, import duties. It's not fiscal tightening, Madam President. What we have here is economic strangulation.
Yes.
Madam President, if we're truly to debate this act, is it built on generating growth? No, it's not. Is it built on generating sustainable development? No, it's not. Is it built on putting our resources to work to generate greater wealth? No, it's not. Is it about keeping children in school and higher learning? No, it's not. Is it about diversification away from oil and gas? No, it's not. Protecting poor and vulnerable? No, it's not. And I have to agree with my colleague, Senator Mahabir, that there is not enough in this budget to defend the poor, and in particular the poor pensioners. Madam President, if the budget is not built on any of these factors, then why is it here? What does it actually achieve? You see, what the government has actually done is we find ourselves after 13 months of this Keith Rowley administration, is a declining economy, shrinking gross domestic product, and a government that can't generate new economic activity. And what it does instead is to tax, tax, tax. In other words, the government has chosen to shore up its revenue by taking more from the people in order to enhance their income. Minister of Finance said in the 2016 budget that the IMF team were here and certain advices were given. And I'll list them quickly. Implementing a property taxation system, broadening the VAT base, increasing excise taxes, increasing personal income tax, increasing corporation tax, eliminating the fuel subsidies, reducing other subsidies and transfers, introducing wage and hiring restraint mechanisms. And that, Madam President, is exactly what they've done. There is no need for the IMF to come to Trinidad. And the promises given by this government that they will never come to Trinidad are hollow when in fact they are here already. And they're taking the measures of the IMF.
They are here already and they're advising on the TTRA.
Senator Mark.
Oh, sorry,
Senator Solomon does not need an echo.
Sorry, Madam President. My apologies.
Madam President, a blueprint for transformation is what this is called. Blueprint for transformation? We on this side don't think so. This is not a blueprint for transformation. This is transforming the nation into a recession-driven nightmare scenario. And there is no way out. Madam President, I want to just touch on the 7% online tax. It is our view that this tax will kill small and medium-sized businesses. You see, Madam President, I'm not clear as to what consultation or what data drives the decisions of this Minister of Finance. A 7% online tax would affect small businesses who are actually buying stock, buying goods online. They perhaps can't get access to foreign exchange as easily as the large conglomerates, and they can purchase the goods online and support their small business. Whereas the larger businesses can order in bulk, and they come in containers. So what exactly are we doing to these small and medium-sized businesses by putting on them a further 7% online tax? Well, you're stifling them, and you're enriching the conglomerates. Exactly. Because you're putting the small and medium-sized businesses out of commission. And this is exactly what they did with the second-hand car dealers. The same sort of mechanism, the same sort of measures. This is an elitist PNM government, and this is an elitist tax, just as it will put a lot of businesses out of commission, just as it did the second-hand car dealers.
Definitely. 1% government, only 1%.
Madam President, in terms of tourism, the PNM manifesto, which is now government policy, did not even have a chapter to deal with tourism. They still don't have a chapter dealing with tourism. There is a vacuum of ideas. There seems to be there's no cohesive policy or plan or vision of how we're going to generate tourism in this beautiful republic of ours, Trinidad and Tobago. And this is a problem we're having. Now, I wish that this government would actually articulate a proper vision, because tourism is a massive foreign exchange earner. It actually is the largest employer in the world, and it's the fastest growing industry in the world. And to ignore it would be tragic. And not to give it the resources to kickstart the tourism sector would be tragic. Now, a little known fact is that tourism is in fact the fastest growing industry in this region. So this Caribbean destination is in fact the fastest growing in the world. And the Caribbean recorded a growth of 7% last year. And just a fraction of that, when you compare that to the world average, was 4.2%. That means 28.7 million people came to this region, and they spent over 30 billion US dollars. Now, unfortunately, Trinidad and Tobago is lacking in that. But that shows what is out there, and that is available. If we could just get our marketing right, get our strategy right, and have a plan in order how to capture that market. because the Caribbean is in fact the most dependent region on tourism as well. But what we have here is a complete abandonment of the tourism sector, a vacuousness of a plan. Last year, the PNM announced a tourism growth strategy, and that again articulated more questions rather than answers. Under the partnership government, there were several clusters to achieve diversification. There was sport tourism, and we successfully completed the Wallerfield motor racing circuit, which was resurfaced, the National Cycling Center, the National Tennis Center, the Aquatic Center. We poised ourselves to become the epicenter for sport tourism in the Caribbean. We also focused on medical tourism, and that is where the Couva Children's Hospital would have come in, the teacher hospital in South. And unfortunately, we all know that they won't open the Couva Children's Hospital out of political spite. And as a result, the children of Trinidad and Tobago and medical tourism is at a zero. Madam President, we have discussed this before. We've raised it previously. But there's a dire need for support for Tobago, not just in terms of selling tulum and selling juice. It is about creating proper circumstances for Tobagonians to live and prosper. Now, fishing is a big activity in Tobago, and yet still the government cannot provide a proper place for Tobagonian fishermen to get gas for their boats, to outhaul their boats, to support them in their endeavors. So what you see people in Tobago gas stations, fishermen with trucks and pickups, filling up their diesel and their gas in the gas station, and then going down to the beach, literally the beach, and siphoning this gas into their engines. And the gas is spilling all over, it's affecting the ecosystem. Then they have to rough it and tote the boat manually into the water. Then they go fishing, then they come back. When they have to outhaul, there's no facility for outhaul. The boats are actually manually 12 men come in to pull out a pirogue, and then they have these wooden stilts that actually balance the boat. And that is how they do their outhauling. And they clean the underneath of the boat using chemicals, and that goes straight into the Bucco Reef and destroys the ecosystem. And you want to tell me that that is a caring PNM government? That is not care. That is not a caring. We've heard that they were going to do marinas. We don't see any action. We hear a lot of talk, but there's no delivery. And this is where the PNM falls short. No delivery. Madam President, there's no point talking about tourism or diversification or getting people to visit our wonderful Twin Island Republic when the crime situation is out of control.
Totally.
Now, how can you invite persons to come to your country, and when you go on their travel advisories, see what they tell their citizens? And if I can refer to the UK travel advisory, there is a high level of gang-related violent crime in Trinidad, particularly in the inner city neighborhoods, East Port-of-Spain City Centre, Laventille, Morva, and Barrett area. This crime tends to occur within local communities, but can sometimes affect visitors. A British national was murdered after being robbed at gunpoint in the Mount Dare area as late as 10th of April 2016. And it goes on, and it goes on. Always drive with your windows down, don't take taxis or maxi taxis. That is the UK travel advisory, which is used by a lot of Europeans as well. The American travel advisory, and we know that Sandals depends a lot on North American traffic, says violent crimes, including assault, kidnapping for ransom, sexual assault, and murder, have involved expatriate residents and tourists, including US citizens. The perpetrators of many of these crimes have not been arrested. It is highly recommended that female visitors and residents avoid traveling alone, particularly at night in secluded areas. In Tobago, violent crime is an issue, including attacks on expatriate residents and tourists in their residences, many of which involve the use of machetes. There have been reports of home invasions in the Mount Irvin, Bucco Bay, and Bacalet areas, and robberies occurring at waterfalls and isolated beaches in Tobago, where visitors are not in a group. And it goes on and it goes on. So, Madam President, the point is that this is the travel advisories of our originating destinations. This is where we rely on persons to bring in foreign exchange. If we cannot change the crime situation, we are faced with a lack of persons coming to Trinidad and Tobago. Why would they come here? We're competing against other nations that are safe, no travel advisories, 5-star hotels, good quality of life, good tourism, good services. Madam President, we need to solve this crime problem. Now, Madam President, it's been said that we do need a 5-star resort and that we rely on tourists to fill these 5 stars. And I want to turn now to the Sandals Resort. The opposition is in favor of any initiative that will serve the people of this beloved country. However, be warned, all that shines is not gold. We've been shown a slew of figures in relation to this Sandals Resort. And again, it begs more questions than answers. And I want to make it very clear that I want to have these questions answered before anything else moves forward in terms of the Sandals investment. What is the dollar value of the Sandals investment? Is the government going to be a major partner or a minor partner? If government is to be the major partner, why was the search for a partner not transparent, equitable, and objective? Sandals is not the only successful hotel chain operating in the Caribbean space or even in the international space. In fact, they may not be the most apt for our needs, as the value chain is certainly very decreased. How much cash equity will Sandals be injecting? What's the total number of rooms to be constructed? We have heard 750 being bandied about. Now, if you take those figures at a capital cost benchmark for a 4 to 5-star resort hotel, usually development costs of about $400,000 to $500,000 per room, the project would have an estimated capital cost of between $2 to $2.5 billion. What are the room rates and hotel occupancy required for this project, and how do they compare historically to what has been achieved in Tobago? Now, let's not forget that Tobago Hilton failed because they could not deliver the room rates and the occupancy required for profitability. Hilton eventually sold its stake for US $1. So I asked today, where are the pre-feasibility studies and the feasibility studies that can show that this project can in fact turn a profit? Is the Magdalena full? As I understand it, it's never full to capacity. So what are we going to do to fill this proposed Sandals Resort? If the room count is 750, the estimated of 1,500 permanent jobs of the Minister of Finance is uninformed. As we need to have 3 to 4 staff, that would mean per room, which would leave between 2,250 to 3,000 persons. Now, where will these workers come from? Unemployment in Tobago is at 3%, so they certainly can't come from Tobago. Will Sandals be plundering the staff of the existing hotels and thus impair these businesses that families spent a lifetime building? Or is the intention to import workers? We don't know the answers to these questions, but these are pertinent questions. How will the service quality challenges that have been the bane of Tobago tourism for decades be overcome? A situation created and sustained by the THA through its provision of jobs to a wide swath of Tobago labor force, making them unreceptive to committing to the rigors of a quality delivery service hotel owner and guests. Now, don't take it from me. The Tobago Hotel Association has said that one of their greatest challenges is actually getting staff, getting workers to assist in their hotels. And they represent 102 businesses and 95% of the tourism product in Tobago. So one has to listen to what they say to understand that they actually find themselves in a position where they're competing with the public sector for workers as a private sector. So how can we be weaning ourselves, as we are told we are doing, off of the government dependency syndrome, when in fact what we're doing is competing? It makes no sense. Now, a large segment of Sandals guests are from North America, and there's no direct airlift of note into Tobago from North America, and tourists dislike destination where they have to disembark with luggage. So all the flights that come from USA and Canada are of little value to the Sandals hotel. So Sandals is an all-inclusive hotel. A significant proportion of their operational inputs are premium products not produced in this country, from furniture and fittings to linens to toiletries to food and beverage. Minister of Finance needs to clarify what the net foreign exchange usage of this project will be. So, of great national importance will be, is this project to be handed over to the THA, which has shown itself fundamentally incapable of executing large capital projects? As I stated before, I need not remind this august chamber of the Scarborough Hospital, which skyrocketed 500% over budget from 135 million to 735 million. And the Shore Park Cultural Complex, which I mentioned earlier, which went from $149 million to $1 billion. So again, 500% over budget. Value for money? P&M style. We need to understand that once this project secures fiscal incentives from the Tourism Development Act, it will enjoy a 7-year corporation tax holiday, capital allowances and accelerated depreciation, which when aggregated would mean this project would not yield 1 cent in taxes for 12 to 15 years from the commencement of operations. So let's say it takes 3 to 5 years to construct. It's been a year and something that P&M have been speaking about it. Nothing has yet happened, no firm plans. So give them another year to finally get a plan. And let's say construction takes 3 years. We're not going to see taxes for another 20 years? Is that value for money? So if I could just sum up the questions and the issues, and we're not saying that it is not an appropriate project, but we need answers. We need to know what the arrangement is, what the deal is. So Sandals project may not create significant employment for Tobagonians. We've already discussed that. It has the potential to seriously impair existing hotel operations in Tobago. It may deliver little value added for Trinidad and Tobago. There is no existing airlift to support bringing guests to the hotel. No tax revenues for at least 15, perhaps more, 15 years. And an arm of the government may be charged with its execution that has a dizzying and dismal failure and record of incompetence and no value for money. So what is this? Is this going to be some sort of version of the World GTL project? Another multi-billion-dollar junk pile? Now, one final thought on Sandals. Who has done the due diligence on Sandals? I want to remind this House and the people of Trinidad and Tobago that in 2013, Sandals paid a fine of $12 million to the Turks and Caicos government to resolve allegations of bribery of government officials and money laundering. Maybe therein lies the answer as to know what qualified them, but what pre-qualified them for this P&M administration to so hurriedly get into bed with them. Madam President, this Rowley-led P&M government has not been doing anything to attract investment and has in fact been doing the reverse. They've been attacking private investors who would have made significant investment during the period of the partnership administration. Now, whilst there is a need to review and garner a full understanding of these investments in context of planning efforts, the present stance and behavior of this P&M is sending a clear message that Trinidad and Tobago is not attractive for local and private investment. In fact, we are saying that the behavior of this government sends a clear signal that this country is unsafe to invest. With scarce resources, there are other options which private investments can pursue outside of Trinidad and Tobago. So, Madam President, we look at situations like what's happened in the Invaders Bay project, where a major investment is being shut down, one that could create 10% of the GDP. Now, they talk a good talk, they talk diversification, they talk all of these matters, but they don't actually deliver it. And Madam President, another example is what actually happened with the Chaguaramas Development Authority. The past administration, the partnership, government successfully managed in the Northwest Peninsula to attract $2.5 billion worth of private sector development into projects in Chaguaramas under a public-private partnership agreement. This is the largest investment in the non-oil and gas sector. Diversification, featuring a regional and entertainment hub, estimate to generate over 10,000 jobs in the hospitality and entertainment sector. All lands are leased, and after the lease term, usually 30 years, the infrastructure and the improvements made return to CDA and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I dare say that this is more than the PNM have managed to attract investment for the entire country since they have been in power, Madam President. There was a vision, a plan, dragon boat centers, vendor booths, golf academy at night, hotels, restaurants, boardwalks, safari zoo that even included elephants. Now, all of these investments support each other, and they together would make the whole. Now, what we've seen is that the entire PNM administration seems to be focused on a national tourism policy that is all surrounded around the Sandals investment. Well, under the partnership, we secured hotels, eco-resorts, boardwalks, far more than one project. Now, Madam President, if you think, for instance, the zip line, the first that it's done in its region, the zip line was a foreign company that came in to do the training for safety requirements. And now, 63 people completely employed from the fence line community who run that establishment. Highly successful establishment. First of its kind. The boardwalk, well, it speaks for itself. It's now safe. You go down there at night, there's CCTV cameras, emergency buttons, police headquarters, new police bicycles. But that has, of course, been purposely deteriorated under this PNM administration. Where is the innovation? Where is the creativity? Where is the diversification? These have not been done by the PNM. Then in comes the PNM 1 year later, and they say they declare all leases null and void. Everything illegal. Why? Because they're not in keeping with the 1974 plan that they did 40-something years ago. You are telling the people of Trinidad and Tobago that you're stopping all these projects and declaring them null and void because they're not in keeping with a 45-year-old plan that the PNM are clinging to? Highly unreasonable. And what it reeks of is political spite. Because this does not help anybody. You can't declare it illegal because you're not judge and jury. And it is not illegal because the 1974 plan, in fact, was overridden by the 1988 plan according to the own PNM CDA board. And that leasing policy talks about the 1988 plan. Now, under the partnership government, there was a master development plan for Chaguaramas and a national spatial development plan for the country. And that did go to cabinet. So, Madam President, let us take an example. What is legal for PNM is illegal for everybody else. So, you come and you say everything is illegal, all these leases are illegal because they're not in keeping 1974 plan. And then the first RFP you put out as a board, unbelievably, is for a hotel up in a tracking station, which is clearly in breach of the 1974 plan. So you are actually acting illegally. So, I mean, it's preposterous, but that is what happened. Then you say the anchor project, the water park, which is one of the anchor projects that will draw in persons and support all the other projects. You say that is illegal because it's not in keeping with the 1974 plan. But when you actually look at the 1974 plan, that area is actually designated for water recreational activities. Now, the real clincher in this thing is that when you look at the records, the PNM had actually allocated a water park to a company called Soja Days right at that, on the same location. So what's legal for the PNM is illegal for everybody else. Now, they say that it is no value for money, illegal land grab. That water park that they had awarded at the same spot was for $87,500. The rent, once this water park is built out, would be $5 million a year. Plus, you're creating hundreds of jobs. But because we delivered it, and the partnership government delivered these massive projects and small projects, it is deemed illegal. And out of political spite, they're going to try and shut down these projects. So they wage war on the investors. It is the same way the Shack Hotel, which we managed to get an investor, they're trying to shut that down. It does not make any sense for a country to preach economic diversification, to preach job creation, to talk about getting investment and making it secure and providing incentives, when the minute that those projects are actually on the way, the investment is created, the diversification is happening right before your eyes, they just turn around and the government wages war when they should be welcoming them. That makes no sense. What message are you sending out to the international community? You're sending out that it is unsafe, that the political will can change, and then your agreements and your leases and your joint venture and your money that you've invested is no longer safe. That is why what I'm saying is that the PNM are not genuinely interested in the people of Trinidad and Tobago. If these projects are allowed, the entire Carnage and half of Diego Martin could be employed. 10,000 jobs created. $2.5 billion worth of infrastructure will revert back to the people of Trinidad and Tobago after 30 years. Now, we as a partnership government, we didn't just focus on South Trinidad as the propaganda that the PNM tried to spread. We focused everywhere. We did projects in Diego Martin for years. The residents of Diego Martin were suffering. They were sitting in traffic. They couldn't get anywhere, so we built a Diego Martin highway. And it's tremendous difference. Diego Martin has been suffering. The youth had nowhere to go. We built a state-of-the-art MIC facility where they trained thousands of young men and women in the trades. Is there a problem with that? No. We put a Carnage health facility in Carnage. The problem is that the partnership government did more for the residents of Diego Martin and Port of Spain than this PNM government. And what is more offensive is that this is in their Prime Minister's constituency.
Exactly.
Do you think the PNM government went down to Siparia and got $2.5 billion worth of investment for anything? No. No, so what I'm trying to say is that this government needs to have continuity, needs to honor the work of the partnership government and do some continuity. Stop operating on political spite and victimization and pure, that is not in keeping with what the people of Trinidad and Tobago deserve.
And the Koto behavior.
Madam President, if it is that you are serious about economic development, job creation, diversification, then you need to hold hands with the private sector, because you don't have the money to do it, the government doesn't have the money to do it. They need to form proper public-private partnerships that are transparent and value for money that would help create this. And sending the messages out to the general public that this is not in keeping with what this government is about, then you will chase economic development away, not only locally, but internationally. And that is not acceptable. The people of Trinidad and Tobago deserve better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, I beg to move that the Senate do now adjourn to Friday, the 21st of October, 2016. That's tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. I mean, sorry, my apologies, at 10:30 p.m. 10:30 p.m. Sorry. 10:30 a.m. 10:30 a.m.
Frankie?
a.m. My apologies, Madam President. Let me repeat that. Madam President, I beg to move that this Senate do now adjourn to Friday, 21st of October, 2016. That's tomorrow at 10:30 a.m.
And the campaign started anytime.
Honorable Senators, the question is that this Senate do now adjourn to Friday, October the 21st, 2016 at 10:30 a.m. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This Senate now stands adjourned to Friday, October the 21st, 2016 at 10:30 a.m.